one realizes very quickly we've been seeing this technology for decades. I had access to all those programs. Windows, no real wings or control surfaces, no obvious signs of propulsion, and yet this object is witnessed now by 4 separate individuals in 2 separate aircraft.
Welcome back, guys. It's been a couple of hours since I saw you last. Thank you so much to everyone that joined me earlier for my conversation with Avi Loeb, and for coming and joining me for a second time. I'm really excited for this conversation. I've been following this gentleman's work for many years now. So yeah, as always, guys, if you have any questions, please pop them in capital letters so I can see them in the live chat. Please keep the live chat nice and friendly. I appreciate that. You always do. So Alejandro Rojas is joining me today. He has been working in this subject for many years. He runs Open Minds TV. He is the head of research and content at Enigma Labs, and also a member of the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. So let's jump straight into it, guys. Please welcome Alejandro Rojas. Alejandro,
hello.
How you doing?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. I noticed Sully here is from Cardiff, UK. Actually, I'm in Phoenix now, but I live in Cardiff, California. So,
oh, how strange.
It's named after Cardiff in the UK, actually.
Oh, right. Okay. Like twin towns.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Alejandro, thank you so much for joining me. Like I said, I've been following your work for many years now. And I'd just like to know sort of your background to start us off. What got you interested in UFOs and how it progressed into sort of being involved in the community?
Yeah, I would say that, the simple story is I always had an interest in science. In fact, I wanted to be a rocket scientist when I went into school at SCU Boulder, actually, which they have a great program and have produced a lot of astronauts. I was hoping to be one at the time. But, I fell in love with journalism in college, and that's what really hooked me. In fact, I've been kind of telling it this story this way, which is true. And it's kind of funnier, is that, the person who got me into journalism, she was the news director of the radio station at Mesa State College, which is actually where I also had gone. But sorry, I got distracted. It's always hard not to look at the comments and get distracted. People are so funny. But anyway, she had a boyfriend who was really into UFOs, and it was so annoying, and I couldn't stand it. And that because he wouldn't stop. But, I started listening to him, looking into stuff, and I just noticed there was a lot of credible information that wasn't being covered. I watched all the documentaries, but, he was letting me in on some of these very credible people that weren't in these documentaries. So I saw it as a beat, that I didn't feel that the media was telling the full story like they normally would for any other story. I found that curious and, to be honest, a bit irrational, that the taboo around the topic. So I decided to cover it. And of course, I was super skeptical going into it, but open-minded. My Native American, I think, background has really opened me to the, lots of different possibilities of what might be out there, and keeping an open mind about, our reality. Not only that, I think especially in space science or astrophysics, a lot of times we discover things that we never would have imagined were out there, almost on a regular basis. In fact, I would argue that most astrophysics is like that. So definitely, realizing we don't have all the answers. So that's where I started. So I started covering it as a regular journalist. It's not like I could get a lot of work writing about UFOs. So I started writing for Medium, a couple other places. Then started, luckily, by the time I really, it was like a Richard Dreyfuss thing where I, went in my room and I was total kind of anti social for a period of time, reading every book I could get my hands on. And once I felt I read all the books I could read, I decided to join MUFON. I wanted to talk to witnesses. And that turned into a big, huge ride for the next decade or so, where, luckily the headquarters were out where I lived. So eventually I moved on to helping out the board of directors, including doing PR and being the official spokesperson for MUFON for a period of time, because the media did have a hunger. And this is what I tell people when people talk about the media. I feel like I've been really successful at getting to mainstream media because I act like mainstream media, if not above. I think, it's always important to cite your sources.
Yeah.
But in this field, you have to make sure the credibility of your sources are even higher than they would be for a normal story because of that taboo around this topic. So that was really important. And that was one thing we could offer at MUFON was legit information. And that's what the media wants is if you give them something that's weird or too fringe, they're going to make fun of it. But think of the position you're putting this reporter in. Is this reporter, are you asking this reporter then to kind of substantiate what you're saying without evidence? However, if you have something very compelling, like a former director, defense secretary of Canada talking about this topic or something like that, that's newsworthy, even if that person is saying something that's kind of weird. That's a newsworthy story. So understanding the newsworthiness is what's really important. And people will cover it, as we've seen, if you give them something substantial. So even back in the days that I kind of feel like that were the dark ages of this field, maybe, late 90s, early 2000s, where people, the media especially, was super skeptical, they were still open to really credible information on the topic. So that's what got me into it. In freelance, I did cover space and science more often. That opened a lot of doors to be able to talk to some astronauts and stuff, but and do lots of NASA coverage. But and I did my best, and I think I have been successful that every astronaut, not every astronaut, now that I think about it, but almost every astronaut I've interviewed, I've been able to ask what they think about UFOs, including Scott Kelly, who's now on the NASA board.
Sure.
And this is interesting too, is that I typically find, because when you go to these things, you follow the publicists and you follow their guidelines. And whenever I ask publicists, even NASA, certain NASA PR people, they love UAPs. They're like, nobody's asked that question, or, we don't know much about this. So they love hearing that. Of course, the astronauts themselves are not as eager to talk about these topics typically, but there is some openness by the general public, which bleeds over to employees of these agencies, and that's a lot of what we're seeing. There's the interest in a lot of these agencies in the government is similar to the interest in the general public, which is about polls show a 50-50 split, if not these days more towards people having an interest than not.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The one thing, you mentioned there, sort of the end of the 90s, early 2000s, a big event back then was the 2001 Disclosure Project with Stephen Greer, which obviously wasn't so big for the subject, but then it feels like it may have simmered down quite quickly afterwards. And then we had the sort of 2013 citizens hearing on disclosure. So it feels like we've got, bumps along the road, and all pre 2017. How did that feel that time? Did you see moments of excitement for the subject, and it died down? How was it?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. So 2001, that was really huge for me because, like I said, I was interested in these stories that weren't being told, and then Stephen Greer brings all of these very credible people who are the type of people that would be newsworthy on many topics, especially this one. There's a packed house of media, watching these people talk. But I think CNN did one couple-minute piece. There were only a couple pieces of media that resulted from that. And that was really shocking to me. That was a huge motivator for me to get information out there. And it was also, so that was a big one, certainly. And then, like you said, 2013 was The problem with 2013 and by that time, and a little bit of the problem in 2001 is they still weren't reading the room when it
Right.
came to the public and the media. So, when you mix in some very credible, established, defense industry people with people making really wild claims that they can't substantiate, some of whom arguably could be debunked,
Yeah.
it makes it more difficult for the media to cover those sort of topics. And the same with 2013 was similar. So I think that they demonstrated, researchers can be a little more disciplined. I mean, if we really want to get the type of coverage that will be really effective to the general public. I think both of those um, events were, head turning for a lot of people. So I think they were effective for the population, but the media still didn't kind of pick it up in the manner I think we were all hoping. And so, to your point, these were kind of these little moments of attention. For me, the big moments of attention were like Stephenville was a really big one for
Right.
MUFON at the time. When we were investigating that. That was also a huge one. And then Chicago O'Hare was also a really big one. And those are great cases because those, we've got a lot of data, we've got a lot of mainstream media involved. In fact, both of those events were kind of made big by mainstream media. And that's what's kind of weird is that it's always a wait and see. What is the media going to pick up on? Is it a good case that we can research and provide some good data on, or is it something to shy away from? Luckily, they jumped on Stephenville and Chicago O'Hare, and there was good information to share. And so I think those were the perfect storm where you have the media and the public really interested. And they were kind of little test runs for the New York Times, which was the big one, of course, in 2017.
Yeah, completely agree. It does seem like it was all sort of leading towards something, and when that happened, I guess it did seem like it changed the game a bit. And here we are, 5-6 years later. So next up, I'd love to talk about Enigma Labs because this is an endeavor that I've been keeping an eye on, and I think it's really fantastic how it's been launched and that. So could you just tell us a bit of background about how it came about and its purpose?
Yeah, really, some people in the tech industry who wanted to figure out how to help, looking at this topic, some of, what can be done. And so talking to different people they have connections with, very intelligently, I think, discovered that, one of the big things, and you may have heard this, I'm sure you have, a lot of us science-oriented groups or individuals have been wanting a database. It's something that a lot of the SCU group, the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, came from MUFON, including myself, from leadership in MUFON. And that's what that was our major goal. But there's limited resources. MUFON had been getting a lot of requests from people to do the more kind of fringe type of stuff, kind of similar to the disclosure in 2013. And so, which is totally fair. That's what the people wanted. And so MUFON decided to kind of open up the topics they were into. And so at that time, a lot of the SCU guys decided, well, let's focus on science. And so that's kind of how SCU started. But everybody's been wanting a database. You hear Valet, was kind of working on a database. The ATIP team, To the Stars, everybody. So it's really smart that they chose that to hone in on. And then luckily I was brought in and able to kind of introduce them to the scientific community and get us really embedded. So now we regularly talk with a lot of the scientific community, that are into this topic, that are researching UAP. The reason we've done that is because that's the big point of the tool. I mean, there's two things. We want to share with the public, so the public can have access to information, can submit sightings, look up sightings, so that the public has a place to go. But then all of that data, of course, we want to get to researchers because all of us, who have been in this topic feel that that's an excellent way to be able to make some really great discoveries. And in fact, at the SCU, we've been doing that. It took us a long time to manually scrub that data to find the really good cases to start to do some analysis on. And we've got a couple projects going on right now. If you go to explorescu.org, you can go look at our last couple of newsletters. I would highly recommend that. And you can see some of the progress on some of those projects and some really interesting information. But, with Enigma Labs, we're going to be able to greatly speed up the process of, mechanically scoring cases to find out where the good cases are, so researchers can have good batches of cases that they can then investigate and research for whatever they're doing. And, it's a citizen science thing too. Everyone will have at their fingertips finally, these tools to be able to do their own research and make some discoveries. So super, super excited about it. We're launching things slowly. And especially the researcher tools will probably be more towards the back end of our launch. But right now we have something I've been working on, which is commissioning a lot of great writers to write pieces about UAP cases and people and individuals to give people a background. So if you go to our website, enigmalabs.io, and look at the library, you're going to see dozens and dozens of articles, well-researched and cited on a lot of great cases, new and old. And that's a new blog that we just put up. And that's the other thing I'm working on is a blog. So we're going to have some regular blog articles coming out where we are sharing information that we're gathering, but also, giving you our thoughts or ideas on other things. So for example, completely transparent. In fact, if you scroll down a little bit, the last blog was transparency for data, privacy for the people. What that means is most of our individuals in our organization don't share their name. They want to remain anonymous. And people, SCU is similar because the taboo still exists, And so, unfortunately, but I always make this argument when people have said, well, I thought everything's about transparency. It is. And we're transparent with the data. And what I mean by that is that with the blog, we're going to be sharing like all of the sausage making details. So you'll be able to see how that scoring works. The scoring right now, we are very transparent with the scientific community because we're asking their input. What do you guys think of this? What do you think should be tweaked or changed? And we want to make sure that it's fully transparent because researchers need to understand every minute detail about the data and how the data is gathered if they're going to write a paper, because they have to justify that or speak to that. So it's incumbent upon us to be transparent on all of those things. So it's going to be fun because we're going to be starting to have these conversations in the research community that really haven't happened yet, but are really important conversations where we'll be able to talk about, all of this stuff. How do we do this? How do we square that? How do we analyze this? How do we figure that or this out? Let alone being able to discuss and debate the findings that people have, which I'm extremely excited about.
Yeah, that is exciting. I'm just going to bring that back up because I want people, all the links for everything we discuss are in the description below, but I want people to go check out the blogs. But this piece, I just came across it today and read it. It's fascinating. It gives details on the sightings, and you've got a video with the anomaly or anomalies from 2 vantage points. And this is great. And then, you mentioned that people can submit sightings. It's a really easy interface to give details on your sighting with an option to add videos and images if needs be, which I think is just really good to have a really user-friendly tool like that. So that's really good. What I was going to ask about, it's just, my mind's just gone. Sorry, it's been a long day.
No problem.
I worked it out. How is it? You get all these sightings coming in from the public. How do you determine like which ones you're going to research over others? Is it like a process of people sitting down and?
That's a great point. So we're not necessarily the research group. We will be providing data as we run across it and findings as we run across it. But our focus is not so much the research. It's more of the gathering of the sightings and then getting that output, getting that data into our databases, acquiring databases, because that's what we're doing also, is we're working with a lot of UFO researchers around the world to
Right.
acquire new databases. We've developed technology where we can take a letter or report and scan that and get all the data out of it and get it into the database. So we're kind of that tech side to get everything into the database for people to use, and then work on those tools and ingesting and everything to make that data available for everybody. So we're kind of like providing the tools essentially for researchers. And then the researchers are doing the work, and we hope to create a community where researchers can share their findings and hopefully, work with especially some of these UFO researchers that we work with who are, very scientific minded and very accomplished in their fields, so they can also troubleshoot that data, because that's kind of like what we do at SCU,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the scientific process, which can be difficult. And I know a lot of people in the UFO world can sometimes have struggle with it, because the idea of the scientific process is you come up with an idea, you write an argument as to why I'm right, and then people beat it up, and you should have beat it up yourself. And in fact, in your paper, you should have, here's where I may be wrong.
Yeah.
And then you send it out, people beat it up, and then the whole point is to have some good data as output. And I think that we've seen that there are skeptics who are always skeptical
Sure.
of cases, even very strong ones. But I think what we've seen is, for example, at SCU, the Navy case, the Aguadilla case, some of the cases we've got papers on are very strong. Does everybody agree with us? No. But the vast majority do. And the vast majority, if not all, I would say, I'll stick with right now, the vast majority of scientists agree as well. And it is a consensus sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we feel pretty comfortable with those pieces, that they're strong. And we do have a consensus from the scientific community that we were on the right track with those papers. And we have been able to demonstrate some anomalous behavior.
Yeah. And I think, the subject has been crying out to be taken seriously by the scientific community. So I think the more we see of that, it's nothing but good going forward. So, that's really good to see. I'm all over the shop tonight, and my apologies. So yeah, you mentioned SCU again, great bunch of people. I've spoken to Rich Hoffman a couple of times, fantastic organization. And yeah, I think the work they do is fantastic. Obviously you're a part of that. Is there anything they're working on that you can tell us about at the moment that we might have to look forward to?
Yeah, I think that, to look forward to, one of the great things that we've been working on, and in fact, after I end here, which now that I think about it, we'll have to end somewhat sharp, but after I end here, I'll join them for a meeting. But a lot of what we've been doing is behind the scenes networking. And that's been a lot of fun and actually really rewarding. Of course, I work on the public education or public relations side of things. And I would say we've had a little bit of input or output, but not a ton of output in the last few months, which hopefully we'll get more here soon. But that's because we've been, especially, before and since our conference, we've been networking, bringing people together. And, it got out that at our conference, we had Space Force there. We had several government agencies represented there, mingling and working with, the UFO researchers. And of course, the UAP researchers themselves. I mean, a lot of our organization are people, scientists or engineers who regularly work with the government, and even OSAP. Some of our members were part of OSAP. So the government, research group, people like Eric Davis, who's fairly active in SCU. And so that's what we've been doing, a lot of networking, bringing people together, and that's been extremely rewarding, and educating people who are getting involved with this. So it's been great. I think the fruits of the efforts are that I think we've been able to really help get people informed and bring people together who are going to help these agencies and these different groups that are getting involved. We've been very open with UAPX and with Galileo, they've been coming to us because they want papers, they want help. And we've been offering that where we can. So I think we've been a really important part in making this cohesive scientific UAP research kind of community, which is extremely needed right now because that's where government agencies are looking to help them figure out what to do.
Yeah, it does. It just brings credibility to the subject. Like you said, it's what we need. I just wanted
But
to highlight
two more things. Sorry,
Yeah.
just real quick. We do have some papers that we are working on that people can go look at. We'll be updating this website soon where people will be able to see the projects we're working on more easily. But we're working we have a USO project. We have a types and shapes project where we're taking that data that I was talking about earlier and doing some analysis. Even at Enigma Labs, we're really partnered up with SCU to help on some of those.
That's incredible. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight this question regarding Enigma that I missed. It's Echoes in Lo-Fi says, are people involved in the armed forces encouraged to use Enigma? And if so, a member level could be helpful. For example, normal citizen level 1, armed services employees level 2. Is that something you've discussed or considered?
We definitely want people in the armed forces to use the app. So yeah, great question. In fact, right now we are really looking for people to submit sightings. So if any of you have had a sighting, please go to our website and take a minute and submit that sighting. It's extremely helpful for us because right now we're teaching the machines and we are testing and troubleshooting all of that. And the reason this gets to the question is that, our system is able to identify people who are in the armed forces. So, for example, which is a little different from other forms that you'll see, is we do ask, give us a little bit of information about the witness or witnesses. And so we can tag things like that so that those can be searchable.
Right.
Because, of course, to this person's point, those are important. It'd be important to be able to pull out. I specifically want to see military cases, like OSAP was doing. So yeah, that could be pulled out. And in fact, you'll see in our library, most of the cases that we've written about are military cases because what I want to lay down there is they're really the best stuff. So some people have. That you'll see that in there, that what you're looking at, if it's military, law enforcement heavy, is because, what we're trying to do is show that this is the stuff that's been, making people scratch their heads. This is the reason Congress is so interested, is because of this history of good cases that are out there by credible people.
Yeah, I know it's just here in the comments. Star Aquatic says, "Yeah, I see. Not straightforward to make a report. Then it is absolutely straightforward, as we showed on the screen. It's a very user friendly. I'll bring it back up one more time, but it's a very user friendly interface. You literally pop in where you saw the sighting, when, some details about it, upload a video or image, how many witnesses, boom. It really is that simple. The link is in the description.
I like this feature too, where we made it very simple in that we have one screen and then we ask, do you want to put in more information? If you do, it goes to a second screen.
Oh, right. Okay.
Some people don't want to take a bunch of time.
Sure.
They just want to take a short amount of time. So that first page is, at least give us this. If you have some more time, give us some more. If not, thank you for your contribution. And yeah, so we've kept it very, very simple, very easy for people, and you can remain anonymous. There's a check there, and then your data is not ported, and you can remain anonymous.
Yeah, I think that's really good, because I think some people may just in the initial phase just want to get the sighting reported and not go into so much detail that maybe they can do at a later date. So I think that's really good. Now, one thing or another thing that I really wanted to talk about was the International UFO Congress that you're involved with. So if you could just talk us a bit about that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah. So the International UFO Congress, well, I used to help the previous owner, the Browns, who owned it since for a very long time. And they held it out in Laughlin. I knew them. And actually, one of the things that I did with MUFON in Colorado when I joined was help them with doing a conference. And we were trained to do it by the International UFO Congress people. They were local to Colorado. That's how I got to know them. They trained us how to do conferences. And then we did like the next 5 in Colorado because we really got it down pretty well. And then we started helping Roswell, and then I in particular. At first, they called MUFON and said, "Hey, will you guys help us with our conference?" So we said, "Sure." I helped them out the next year. MUFON was kind of like, "Well, I'm not sure it's worth the time." And I said, "Well, if you guys don't mind, I'll do it just myself because they're a great group of people. I like working with them." And they're like, "Sure." So I helped them out individually, and helped out the Congress because they helped us with doing the MUFON conferences, and they're great people. So then this gentleman who was independently wealthy decided he wanted to make a website. Jason McClellan, one of my colleagues, was already working for him, John Rayo with Open Minds. And so, yeah, he was like, I'm going to figure out the UAP mystery and start this company. And that was his hobby. He didn't care about making money. He was making money off his other company. So we hired a few of us, including myself, to run and he bought the International UFO Congress. So with Open Minds, we ran it for a few years until finally Open Minds just kind of ended. It was expensive to do everything he was doing. And my girlfriend then my significant other bought the conference. So I didn't get away from it. And which is funny because the conference is certainly more populist, I kind of say. I mean, what we used to try to do is represent all of the different topics in the field.
Yeah.
And not, put our own interpretations on there, just make sure that we didn't have charlatans or people who were serious about whatever it is they were researching and what people in the field were interested in, which can, of course, get much fringier than I'm typically known for that
Sure.
I work on, even to this day. So it's kind of interesting that way. But at the same time, a lot of those people are my friends. A lot of those people, like, let's say, David Childress, who Ancient Aliens, he's a friend of mine. He lives in the Phoenix area. And we may not, Giorgio used to go to the Congress, the International UFO Congress, for a long time. And so a lot of these guys, even if it's not, my expertise or area of interest, they're still good friends. And so I think just a lot of people, especially in UFO Twitter, I think that's important to say. And I do say that a lot. And it's not that I'm name dropping. It's that I'm trying to say people with different opinions can be friends and can get along and hang out and have a good time with each other and debate the topic or, and because so much you see online, these divisions where it's like, you got to be in this camp or you got to be in that camp. You don't have to be in any camp. You can be yourself as an individual and have your own sets of opinions and ideas and still get along with people who have different sets of opinions and ideas. And I think that's just really, really important as far as a concept. And especially right now, because that professionalism is really what people are looking for. That's what the media looks for. That's what these agencies are trying to get involved, are looking for, that, is a level of professionalism where everyone can work together well. And so I think that's important. And that's an important aspect of the Congress. But this year was great. This year we had a couple movie makers, again, friends. But it's kind of weird. I'll get to this in just a second, actually. I want to circle around to that
Sure.
topic. But, James Fox showing his moment of contact for the first time, not technically the premiere. The premiere was the day after the conference, but he snuck it in there so he could show our audiences. Also, we had Randy Nickerson there showing his film, The Aerial Phenomenon, and speaking to it. And then some of the witnesses from that case in that film. Also, I think that people haven't heard from ever. We had an interview with, we had, of course, Bryce Zabel, who's doing his podcast, Need to Know, that everybody is so excited about.
Yeah.
But Micah Hanks from The Debrief, who I think is amazing. The Debrief is such an incredible website. We're lucky to have it. And those guys do some incredible work. Mike has helped us out. Some of those library articles are his, actually.
Oh, right.
A great writer and researcher. So yeah, we had a lot of really great stuff. And then David Marler, which was really important too, had a talk, and then he officially announced his latest effort, which is his National UFO Archives Center, where he's got, the biggest collection of data, and it's growing. as far as the database archive of materials, and we're working with him also to get a lot of that digitized. So yeah, really great event. But it's kind of funny, and this is why I'm circling around, is because a lot of the people we had there, the people like the Nickersons or the Foxes or the Marlers, we have known, and as a community, having worked together for the last couple of decades, it's like family. Me and Bryce and I, have definitely had some phone calls where we've kind of disagreed about things. Marler and I, not so much, but all of these people, we've, with Randy, there's this time where he was really tense at a conference, and I was trying to help him out, and I guess what I mean is you have these such long histories, and that you have these moments of trauma and drama that you live through together, and that's what really makes it feel like a family, where we're just so close. And it really is kind of funny these days too, because when sometimes on UFO Twitter or something, when you have these different camps, people will try to set people against each other, saying, well, this person said that and this person said that. Or like with Eric Davis, a lot of people were saying, hey, you sound like you're being, you're not on Team Eric Davis, which of course I am. I love the guy. I know him. People don't realize that, these relationships we have are solid and they go back quite a ways. So you're not really going to get in between us. We go back quite a way. So we're always going to be talking and working together, and friends and colleagues. And again, it all comes back to, working together well, despite having differences.
Yeah, that's great to hear. We mentioned we had a chat before we came on, just saying that, the one thing I found with conferences is the connections that you make with people. You may not be there to see every single speaker because it might be a part of the topic that you're not interested in, and that's fine. But those little bits in between the speakers where everyone's gathered and talking are just incredible. So, I see conferences getting a bad rep sometimes. People saying, well, it's just the same people saying the same thing year in, year out. But go to them. It's not the case, in my opinion. Sometimes maybe, but I think it has its value, certainly. So
and that is rare. There are some people, I'll admit, let's say like Stanton Friedman, he was an anomaly. He was the one guy where we would have a survey every year. We would be like, we shouldn't bring Stanton again, because he's someone that we brought every year. But we would have a survey, and we would even have people coming up, why do you have Stanton again? He said the same thing he said for the last 10 years. And we would always tell him it's because at the end of the conference, we have a survey, and who's the top of the list? Everybody wants to see Stanton Friedman. So we invite him every year. Same with Travis Walton. Everybody wants to hear what they have to say, even if it's the same thing every year. So we listen to the people. So there are instances of that, but typically, other than those couple rare anomalies, we make it a point to bring new people who are bringing new research. And I've never been the only one to choose the speakers, but and even now I've been so busy I didn't get to have as much of an input. But even now with Karen, who runs it, she has that same commitment, is to look for people doing different new research that even if it's someone who spoke last year, if it's something, I think she's very adamant, it's got to be something new and different. We have David Marler quite a bit, but you'll notice he did a completely different talk than he's ever done before this time.
Yeah, he's an encyclopedia, that man. Fantastic.
He is. He's amazing.
I'm quite conscious of the time, because I know you've got this meeting. I just wondered, before we leave, a couple of topics. I'd love to talk your opinion on the upcoming NASA study about potentially doing some further work next year. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm extremely excited about the NASA study. I think that it's kind of the most important. It's a very important, just because it's science. The great thing about science is that its nature is transparent. Science, to be done right, needs to be transparent. Eric Davis, had even mentioned, because he's got experience working on special access programs or black projects. And he talks about how doing science is really hard. It's good to do engineering. In other words, build a plane where all the research has been done. But doing any type of research is really hard in that, everybody has to be read in. And with most research, you never know what scientific discipline you're going to need to pull from. But if he wants to consult with someone who's an expert in a field he found out that he needs more information on, it's going to take months and tens of thousands of dollars to get that person read into the project. And once they're read into the project and that whole thing has happened, to have your 2-hour meeting to figure out what you need and then you're done. Let alone is it hard for the scientists in the program, but also the scientists outside the program are like, I don't want to go through that. Sorry, I'd like to help, but I don't got the time to do all this. So it makes it really hard. Whereas, especially with NASA, the science they do is very transparent. It's very rigorous, extremely rigorous. NASA is probably the most rigorous when it comes to triple checking everything before they make a statement. An example would be, I think the European Space Agency had, announced that there was evidence of traces of water on Mars a year before NASA did. It's not that NASA didn't have the same data. It's that they were triple checking everything to make sure before they came on board to say, yeah, we think there's traces of water. Of course, now that's a given, but that was a pretty controversial statement back then. So the transparency, I think, is what's going to be really, really important, and the science, because that's where we're going to get answers. They don't have to, be worried about the classified world so much. They're just worried about the science, the aviation, the air safety. People forget that air safety is something NASA also it works on, which is important because people like Ryan Graves, who is one of the jet fighter witnesses on the Theodore Roosevelt, he's been a big advocate, and he's working with the AIAA, and his main thing is air safety, that, we're up there and these things are zooming by us, or we have had near misses with these things. We really need to get a handle on at least, observing and trying to figure out what they are for an air safety issue, especially for, his fellow jet fighter pilots. So that's an important aspect. And then, of course, the transmedium, as far as anything from leaving the atmosphere or returning into the atmosphere, and the reason that's extremely important is that, we've got lots of different types of propulsion we use to traverse inside the atmosphere to fly around, but we don't have many technologies that we use, just rockets essentially to leave and then re-enter the atmosphere.
Sure.
So if we're observing something using some sort of novel technology, that's, going to be very important data. And it's interesting because people like Chris Mellon have alluded to the potential of that sort of data being out there. So that would be interesting to find out. I'm really excited about NASA's involvement. I think that it seems like they're taking it very seriously. What they really had, it appears, is kind of an exploratory group. Should we do this? Those people seem to be convinced that, yeah, let's create a bigger group to look at this even harder. And so now they have a larger group of individuals who are getting together to kind of figure out, okay, what do we do in this space if there's something for us to do? And that's where they're at. So I would say, now's a great time to encourage NASA. That's my NASA hat, but that we need your expertise. We need your help with this topic. It's worth it because the public is interested. They're a government organization. That's who they work for. And that, there are real concerns here when it comes to air safety. So, and NASA's, I'm a huge NASA fan. So I'm very excited about their involvement.
But what would you say to the people that, NASA does get a bad rep and has done for a few decades, being, they know about the UFO subject. They've been sitting on videos and airbrushing this and that over the decades. So how would you sort of convince someone that, oh no, this is different this time? Is there a way that you can kind of do that?
Well, I don't know that I would convince a lot of those people, because some of those people are convinced of things that there isn't a lot of evidence that it's occurred. So they're going on faith. And so you're never going to, it's going to be difficult to gain those people's trusts. So, that is going to be difficult. I think that just doing good work is always what's most important. I know even, with Enigma or SCU, we certainly have people that are skeptical. And all you can do is do just like we've said we're going to do, which we've done is, be transparent, be open, work hard, be professional, and I think with that combination of things, that's how you win people over. And one thing that I've learned from working with NASA is they're ultra professional. I mean, they're a pleasure to work with, from the PR to the engineers to everyone at NASA is a dream to work with. They're there because they're on a shared mission. It's almost like talking to military because they've got a shared goal. They understand their responsibility and that the taxpayer is their boss, and they're just great people. So I think that they're honest and genuine. And if they're skeptical, which some of them are, they'll be honest and genuine about that as well. And so it'll be our job to, show them data that is worth looking into.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's a case of as well, let's just wait and see. We can pass judgment now, or we can slander them here and there, but let's just wait. And that's kind of what I tell people. Let's give them a chance. And if nothing comes of it, so be it. If you want to tell me I told you so, if that makes you feel better, go for it.
Yeah. And I think that part of the problem too is a communication problem that we can all help with, which is, a lot of these guys who have been getting some criticism from the UFO community, by being skeptical. First of all, skepticism is important in science. You have to be skeptical of your own findings. So that's something to keep in mind. Second of all, is there is a communication gap. So in other words, there's the term UFO, which kind of got co-opted to mean alien spacecraft. That's not what it means. That's not what the Air Force meant for it. That's not what I've ever defined and it's not the official definition. It's unidentified. We don't know what the root of it is. Same with UAP, but that baggage seems to have moved across. So when you hear some of these scientists, they're like, I don't know that there are aliens. I'm not sure I want to do any alien hunting. But what they're doing is misunderstanding. Those same people are also saying, though, however, if we're going to look at what some of these things might be, because they might be, things that we haven't discovered before, I'm all for that. I'm all for the science of researching things that we haven't identified yet, which is exactly what they're being asked to do. So they are on board for what the task at hand is. It's just a semantics thing. UAP does not equal aliens. And we've got to make sure and educate people on that. When we're interviewed, when we're talking to anyone, UAP does not equal aliens. It's one potential answer of many, many potential answers.
Yeah. And one thing that I always try and think about as well is that people say NASA knows this. Well, NASA is thousands of employees. So, if you look at people 20, 30, 40 years ago who may have had some information or seen some data, doesn't mean that people on this study have any access or knowledge of that. And it's the same I find when people say the government knows. Well, the government is millions, I think, of employees when you look from the, the government.
Great point. That's a really good point. And I have just not run across evidence of strong evidence beyond hearsay that that sort of thing is being hidden. We heard from the most convincing person at the UFO Congress, which was a good video where we had, of course, he spoke at the Congress, and then we had Lee Spiegel interview him for the Huffington Post, where this Dr. Hoover, who worked in astrobiology with NASA, said, he did believe there was some evidence that was destroyed, but he explained the details. And it wasn't that it was some sort of malicious destruction. It was essentially, there was a scientist who was kind of stubborn, who was saying, this is not the evidence you think it is. I've already shown it's not what you think it is, and just wanted the issue off the topic. So it was one individual who, I'm not sure if that was the best thing to do, but that's different from what a lot of people think is going on.
Yeah. So my final question before I let you go is, we are overdue a UAP report. I just wondered if you had any expectations, any guesses on whether it would be a nothing burger, or we might get some tidbits of information. Anything you're thinking about?
I think that a lot of people in the UFO community might not be excited, but and I gauge that because to me, any of this information that's coming out right now is really important. And I was not necessarily a detractor of the last report. You know, I and it's great that we heard that Dr. Travis Taylor, who of course is on the TV show The Skinwalker, but he's also spoken at SCU even before the television show. He's a scientist who's been on our radar, who we've worked with for years because he's extremely credentialed and intelligent. He was much more skeptical a few years ago than he is now because he feels that he's experienced some strange things, you know, at Skinwalker that he can't explain, that he's trying to explain scientifically. And I don't believe he's a liar or a hoaxer at all. I think that it's not good for, I don't think he wanted to run across anything anomalous. It just happened and he's honest because I don't think that it's something he feels that he was going to run across or, and it's probably caused him some headache. It seems like it has. So he wrote that report, and I think he genuinely probably did his best to gather information and write that report. I believe that. And it was interesting in that we had 144 cases, 99% of which can't be explained. So when it comes to the new report, of course, we've had some alleged leaks. Who knows, you know, how close these people have been to the report. But I mean, what I've read are kind of two interpretations of the same kind of information, which is half glass, glass half full, glass half empty.
Sure.
One side is saying, well, it turns out we're able to explain most of these away. No surprise, so are we, you know, in the general public. And so a lot of it turns out just to be X, Y, and Z. Whereas the flip side of that, which we heard in the Daily Mail, was more like, wow, after we investigated, there's still a lot of these we still can't explain, which I think is a more interesting story, of course, for those of us interested in this topic, and still justifies further research and investigation. So to me, that's kind of exciting that we are going to hear there's a good group of cases that they can't explain. And I hope that we're going to be provided some details about these sightings because, you know, in the Daily Mail, especially, there were details shared that if those details are in the report are going to be extremely compelling and really some incredible cases. If the details aren't in the reports, then you know, it will be less exciting, but I still, you know, to me, I think this is what the people miss when that first report came out and the general public is seeing the military saying we can't explain 140 plus cases and that we take UAP seriously. And this is something that we are not, you know, joking about, that are a serious concern that we have to pay attention to. That's a huge message. You know, and I know for a fact from working with so many in the mainstream that that's very convincing. It's very mind-blowing to a lot of the public. To those of us in this field who have been following it, it's no big deal. In fact, lots of people are like, that's boring. We knew that. Well, the general public did not know that. So that's huge, you know. And in my research, for example, I've been pinging the Air Force on a regular basis when I'm writing articles and always given the same report. We haven't had any concern since 1969. You know, to finally hear them admitting to what we've been reporting, you know, with evidence for so long is hugely validating. So I have more of a positive view on these reports, and I would be surprised if there's not something really kind of mind-bending, especially for the general public in this report, that there might not be anything that gets the UFO field extremely excited, but I think there'll be stuff that'll get the scientific community talking, which is very important.
Yeah, completely agree. Well, listen, Alejandro, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. I really do appreciate you giving the time to me today. To everyone in the live chat, thank you for being here as well. I'm going to be back. Well, I'm going to say, I can't say when. It's when the report drops. I will be going live with Christopher Sharp to cover that. But for now, everybody, thank you so much, and we will see you soon. Take care.